The phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon, just as the Madrid sun was beginning to paint the rooftops of the Salamanca district orange. It was my son, Pablo. His voice sounded strange, tense as if he couldn't breathe. "Dad, is Elena home right now?" he asked. "I just saw a woman identical to her getting on a plane with another man." I froze, not because of the question, but because of the tone. Pablo has been a commander for Iberia for 12 years. He doesn't get nervous easily. "What are you talking about, son?" I asked, setting down the quarterly reports I was reviewing. "I'm at the cockpit at gate C7. My flight to Tenerife is boarding. During pre-flight checks, I looked through the cockpit window and saw someone in seat 4A who looks exactly like Elena. Business class. She's with a man I don't recognize. They're holding hands." My pulse quickened. "Are you sure?" "I'm trained to notice details, Dad. Burgundy sweater, the silk scarf I bought her last month. She's wearing your pearl earrings, the ones Mom gave her at the wedding." I stood up slowly. "Where did she say she was this week?" "Bilbao. An extended meeting for the foundation she volunteers for. She left 10 days ago. But if that's her in 4A on my plane to Tenerife, then everything she told me was a lie." "Can you take a photo?" "Already did. I'm sending it." "Dad, if that's really her, who did I say goodbye to this morning when I called home?" My phone vibrated. The image loaded, grainy but clear enough. Seat 4A, a burgundy sweater, a floral silk scarf, pearl earrings catching the cabin light. A man sat beside her in 4B, 40s navy suit. His hand rested casually on her knee. Their heads leaned close. The woman's profile was Elena's face, Elena's smile. "Do you see it?" Pablo asked. "I see it. That's her. The scarf. The earrings. If she's boarding your flight right now, then who's in our house?" "Give me a minute," I said. I walked to the living room. Sunlight streamed across the parquet floor. A yoga mat was spread out. Elena was in downward dog, breathing steadily. I'd watched that routine every morning for 4 years. She glanced up. "Javier, is everything okay?" The word Javier felt natural to her lips. Since the wedding, she'd slipped into our family with ease, filling the quiet space my wife Carmen had left behind 7 years ago. "Pablo called," I said evenly. "Wanted to make sure you were home." She lowered into a seated stretch. "How sweet. Tell him I'm fine. My phone's in the kitchen on silent. You know I don't like distractions." I studied her face, the small mole near her left eyebrow, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. Everything matched. Back in my office, I called Pablo. "She's here doing yoga. Says her phone's on silent." Silence, Doc. "Dad, did you see the photo?" "I did." I can still see her through the cockpit window. She just laughed at something he said. His hand is on her arm now. "If that's Elena on my plane, then who's in our house?" I felt my chest tighten. "You said she left for Bilbao 10 days ago?" "Yes. Wednesday morning. I opened our home security system." "Let me check something." I scrolled back. This morning, Elena on her mat. Yesterday, making breakfast. The day before, reading on the couch. 10 days ago, timestamp 8:32 M. The front door opened. Elena stepped out with a rolling suitcase, navy blue coat. She locked the door and walked to a black SUV idling at the curb. It pulled away. I kept the footage running. 8:50 a.m. 18 minutes later, the front door opened again. A woman entered, same height, same build, same hair color, but she wore a gray cardigan instead of a blue coat. No suitcase. She moved slowly through the house, looking around carefully, studying. She opened cabinets, checked the refrigerator, ran her hand along the granite countertop as if memorizing the texture. She selected a coffee mug, the chipped one Elena refused to throw away. This woman knew which mug to use. "Pablo," I said steadily. "When you land, you'll observe her from a distance. Don't approach. Don't let her know you're watching. See where she goes, who she meets, then call me. You think it's really Elena? That my wife is on my plane with another man?" I stared at the split-screen footage. On the left, Elena leaving. On the right, someone else arriving. "I think we need more information." "What kind?" "The kind that explains how your wife can be in 2 places at once." After he hung up, the house felt unnervingly quiet. Through the wall, I heard movement, water running, cabinets closing, the ordinary sounds of someone who knew exactly where everything belonged. The woman who looked like Elena, sounded like Elena, knew which burner heated most evenly and where we kept spare light bulbs. The woman who had been living in my house for 10 days. I opened my laptop and began pulling financial records. If someone was impersonating my daughter in law, there would be traces, subtle inconsistencies, patterns. Numbers don't lie. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. Followed them from baggage claim. Pablo texted. Black sedan to Hotel Botanico in Puerto de la Cruz. Watched from lobby. They checked in together. Same room. Dad, what's happening? I looked toward my office door. Beyond it, the woman who wasn't Elena hummed softly in the kitchen. I typed slowly, come home as soon as you can. Don't confront her. Not yet. His reply came instantly. Who is that woman in our house? I stared at the frozen security footage. 2 women, one leaving, one arriving. 18 minutes apart. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I typed the only honest answer I had. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. The next morning arrived with the kind of clarity that comes after a sleepless night. I'd spent hours staring at financial spreadsheets, trying to make sense of the impossible. By dawn, I'd made a decision. Confrontation would come eventually, but first I needed certainty. In my 30 years as a financial inspector for the Spanish government, I'd learned that assumptions get you nowhere. Evidence is everything. I found her in the kitchen around 8 making breakfast. She moved with easy confidence, reaching for the coffee filters without hesitation, knowing exactly which cabinet held the good mugs. She'd mastered the choreography of our household perfectly. I poured myself coffee, watching her slice fruit. The morning light caught her profile, and for a moment the resemblance was so complete it made my chest ache. Except it wasn't Elena. I knew that now, with cold certainty. I kept my voice casual. Pablo and Elena's anniversary is coming up soon. Remember that dinner you two had in Valencia? He mentioned wanting to go back to that restaurant. She looked up, knife paused mid-slice. Oh yes, that was lovely. The view of the city of arts and sciences was beautiful. Wrong. They'd celebrated in Barcelona at a small tapas bar in the Gothic quarter that Elena had insisted on. Elena would have corrected me immediately, probably with a laugh about how I always mixed up their travel plans. This woman just smiled and kept cutting strawberries. Throughout the morning, I watched her perform the role flawlessly. She watered Carmen's herb garden with care. She folded laundry with precise movements. She even hummed while she worked, though the melody was wrong. Elena hummed old boleros, the ones my wife used to love. This woman hummed something contemporary I didn't recognize. Small details, tiny inconsistencies, but they added up. Around noon, I called David Torres. We'd worked together on several cases during my years at the Treasury. If anyone could trace digital footprints without raising alarms, it was David. I kept my voice low, standing in my office with the door closed. I need you to check something for me discreetly. My family accounts. I need to know if there's been any unusual access in the past few weeks. He didn't ask why. Give me an hour. While I waited, I made coffee. She appeared in the doorway, watching me with that concerned expression Elena often wore. You seem distracted today, Javier. Everything all right? I measured grounds carefully, not looking up. Just a busy week ahead. You know how quarterly reports get. She accepted this and returned to the living room. I watched her go, noting how she stirred her coffee. 2 quick circles, no tap on the rim. Yelena had a specific ritual. 3 circles clockwise, 2 taps with the spoon, then she'd set it down on the right side of her cup. Always. Every single time for 4 years. This woman didn't know that. David called back within the hour. Javier, you were right to be concerned. There's a second device logged into your joint accounts. Has been for about 10 days. My hand tightened on the phone. Location? Tenerife. Someone's been monitoring all your financial activity. Bank accounts, credit cards, everything. They set up an email forwarding rule too. All correspondence from your financial institutions is being copied to an external address. I thought about the security footage. Elena leaving at 8:32. This woman arriving at 8:50. 18 minutes to switch places. And in that time, someone had locked down their access to every account we shared. What else can you tell me? The sound of typing came through the line. Recent charges from Tenerife, Hotel Botanico, a restaurant called El Rincón de Juan Carlos, a jewelry store in La Laguna. Want me to keep going? No. My voice came out flat. That's enough. There's one more thing. Withdrawal pattern. Small amounts, always under 10,000 euros. 9,800 exactly, multiple times over the past 3 months. Classic structuring to avoid banking reporting requirements. Whoever was behind this understood financial regulations. They'd been planning this carefully, moving money in amounts that wouldn't trigger automatic alerts. Can you trace where the withdrawals went? Offshore accounts, I can dig deeper, but that takes time and leaves footprints. Do it, but carefully. After I hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. This wasn't simple deception. This was sophisticated fraud, the kind that required planning, coordination, and inside knowledge. I heard her moving around in the next room, humming that wrong melody. She'd been here for 10 days, living in our home, sleeping in our guest room, playing the role of daughter-in-law with practiced ease. And somewhere in Tenerife, someone had been watching through our accounts, monitoring every transaction, every email, every digital footprint we left. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Second device is actively monitoring right now. Whoever's on the other end, they're watching in real time. I looked at my closed office door, thought about the woman on the other side moving through our house with confidence born from careful study. Thought about Elena in Tenerife with a man whose name I didn't know. Thought about Pablo coming home tomorrow, expecting to find his wife waiting for him. Instead, he'd find an actress who knew which mug to use but couldn't remember where they'd celebrated their anniversary. Another text arrived. Javier, this is bigger than identity theft. The offshore accounts, the monitoring, the structuring. This is organized, professional. You need to be careful. I typed back slowly. Too late for careful. I'm already in it. I stood and walked to my office window. Outside, September sunshine painted our neighborhood in shades of gold. The Garcias were walking their dog, the old Labrador retriever that stopped to sniff every tree. A delivery van idled at the corner, the driver checking his clipboard. Everything looked exactly as it should in a quiet Madrid suburb. Peaceful, normal, safe. But inside my house lived a stranger who stirred her coffee wrong. A woman who had memorized our routines, our habits, our lives, but couldn't remember where my son had celebrated his anniversary. And somewhere in the Canary Islands, my daughter-in-law was checking into hotels with another man, laughing at his jokes, letting his hand rest on her knee, while someone I'd never met watched our accounts and moved our money in carefully calculated increments. I thought about Carmen, about how she used to tease me for seeing patterns in everything, numbers, behaviors, inconsistencies. She'd called it my inspector's brain, always looking for what didn't add up. She used to say I could spot a liar from across a room, that I had a gift for seeing the cracks in people's stories. Well, Carmen, I thought, nothing adds up anymore. And for the first time, I wished I didn't see the cracks so clearly. My phone buzzed one more time. David with a final message that made everything worse. The second device in Tenerife. It's been logging in every 4 hours. Someone's checking constantly. They know you're home. They're watching you watch her. I read the words twice, letting them sink in. Every 4 hours. Like clockwork. Someone sitting somewhere, probably on that island with my daughter-in-law, refreshing a screen, watching me move through my own home. Watching me discover the truth, watching me try to hide it. Knowing you're being watched changes how you move through your own home. Every conversation becomes performance, every gesture calculated. I'd built a career on reading people, on catching the small tells that revealed deception. Now I had to hide my own. Every glance at the woman in my kitchen had to look natural. Every pause before answering a question had to seem uncalculated. Every trip to my office had to appear routine. I was being watched by people who thought they were the predators. They had no idea that the old man they were monitoring had spent 30 years chasing people exactly like them. Over breakfast, I started asking questions. Nothing aggressive, just casual conversation between family members who'd known each other for years. She was spreading jam on toast when I mentioned it. You know, I was thinking about that surgery you had. The appendix thing. Still bothers you sometimes, doesn't it? On your left side? She nodded without looking up. Yeah, especially when the weather changes, gets a little tender. I took a sip of coffee to hide my expression. Elena's appendix scar ran along her right side. I'd seen it countless times. This woman had just agreed to pain on the wrong side of her body. I let the moment pass, filed it away with the other inconsistencies. Later that morning, I found her reading in the living room. She looked up when I entered, that practiced smile appearing instantly. Pablo mentioned he's been craving your homemade apple pie lately, I said. The one with the cinnamon lattice crust. You should make it for him when he gets back. Her face lit up. What a sweet idea. I'll bake one this weekend. It's been too long since I made that recipe. Elena had never baked in her life. She told me once, laughing, that her mother had tried to teach her and given up after the third kitchen incident. Elena bought pies from the artisan bakery on Calle de Ponzano, the one Carmen used to love, but this woman had just committed to spending a weekend baking something Elena couldn't make. That afternoon, I tried something different. I was in the kitchen when she walked through, heading toward the back patio with a watering can. I called after her casually. Thanks, Carino. I appreciate you taking care of those herbs. She smiled and kept walking. Pablo never called Elena Carino. He'd called her Luz since their first date. My light, he'd say. Elena had told me the story half a dozen times, always with that soft expression that said the nickname still made her happy. The real Elena would have paused, maybe corrected me gently, or made a joke about it. This woman didn't even notice she'd been called by the wrong endearment. My phone buzzed around 4. Pablo checking in from Tenerife. They had dinner at El Rincón de Juan Carlos last night. I managed to get a better look. The guy's wearing a name badge. Adrian. Looks corporate, professional. They're not hiding anything. I called David immediately. I need you to run a background check. Adrian. Probably connected to financial services somehow? His response came faster than I expected. Already on it. Been digging since you mentioned the offshore accounts. This guy's interesting. Interesting how? Interesting like barely exists on paper. Employment history is thin, shows up connected to a couple of consulting firms that dissolved under questionable circumstances. No criminal record, but I found 2 civil cases that got settled quietly. Both involved fraud allegations. I felt something cold settle in my chest. What kind of fraud? Financial restructuring schemes targeting individuals, not corporations. Both cases involved significant asset transfers right before divorce proceedings. The pattern was becoming clearer. Elena hadn't stumbled into some affair. This was planned, calculated, professional. After David hung up, I stood in my office thinking about where someone might hide something they wanted kept secret but still needed to access occasionally. Elena had claimed her old iPhone was dead. The screen shattered beyond repair. She'd switched to a new one about 6 months ago, but people don't usually throw away phones immediately. I found it in the master bathroom, tucked in the back of the drawer where we kept old medications and forgotten cosmetics. The screen wasn't shattered, it wasn't even cracked. I pressed the power button. The battery showed 4%, but it was enough. The screen illuminated. Unlocked. She'd never changed the passcode. Messages loaded slowly, the phone struggling with its dying battery. A thread with someone saved only as A filled the screen. I scrolled through months of conversation, my pulse steady despite what I was reading. How much longer with the setup? Another week. She's learning the routines. He suspect anything? No, he's predictable. Won't check until it's too late. She's doing great. The messages went back months. Planning, coordination, updates. I kept scrolling, looking for anything that might tell me why. The phone's battery warning flashed, 2% remaining. Then I found it. A message from Elena to Adrienne sent 3 months ago. The timestamp showed late at night when Pablo would have been on an overnight flight somewhere. Javier trusts me completely. Thinks of me as a daughter he never had. This will be easier than the one in Marbella. The phone died in my hand, screen going black. I stood in the bathroom staring at the dark rectangle of glass and metal while that last sentence repeated in my mind. Easier than the one in Marbella. Not their first time, not even their second, probably. This was a pattern, a system, something they'd refined through practice. And somewhere in Marbella, there was another family, another victim, another story like mine beginning to unfold. I thought about victims I'd seen in court cases I'd reviewed during my years at the Treasury, the hollowed out look of someone who'd lost everything to people they'd trusted. I'd felt sorry for those victims, but I'd never truly understood until now, because I was about to become one of them. I slipped the dead phone into my pocket and walked back downstairs. The woman who wasn't Elena sat in the living room reading her book, completely at ease in our home. She looked up when I passed. Everything okay, Javier? The word tasted wrong coming from her mouth now that I knew, now that I understood she was part of something larger, more calculated than simple deception. Everything's fine, I said. She smiled and returned to her book. I kept walking, kept my expression neutral, kept playing the role of the unsuspecting father-in-law. But inside, everything had changed, because now I knew this wasn't about a failing marriage or a midlife crisis or any of the normal human messiness that breaks families apart. This was business. professional, organized, and apparently successful enough that they'd done it before in Marbella to someone who'd probably trusted them just as completely as I'd trusted Elena. That dead phone sat in my desk drawer like evidence I couldn't yet use. The reference to Marbella gnawed at me. Professional cons don't start with €1,000,000 targets. They build up to them, refining their approach with each victim. I opened my laptop and started searching. Adrian Cruz, fraud elderly victims. The results came slowly at first. Then I added one more word. Marbella. The article appeared halfway down the second page. Local news from Malaga, 2 years old. The headline read, Jubilado Marbellí pierde sus ahorros en estafa de inversiones. The victim's name was Horacio Quintana, 74 years old, widower. His wife Pilar had passed away 3 years before. According to the reporter, Horacio had trusted a financial advisor who'd promised to help him invest Pilar's life insurance payout. 600,000 euros gone within 6 months. The article didn't name the advisor, but it described the method. Personal connection through a grief support group, promises to honor the late wife's memory through smart investments, transfers to offshore accounts that proved untraceable. This was Elena's template. I called Francisco Mora, a retired police inspector who still took private investigation work. I need your help with something personal this time. His tone shifted immediately. What kind of personal? The kind that involves my family and someone who needs justice. Francisco listened without interrupting while I explained everything. When I finished, silence stretched between us. Finally, he spoke. Horacio Quintana. I remember that case. He reported it to the Policía Nacional in Malaga, but the evidence trail went cold. By the time anyone started investigating seriously, the money was gone, and so were the people who took it. Can you find him? I need to know if the woman he dealt with matches Elena. Give me a couple of hours. While I waited, Pablo sent another update from Tenerife. A photo this time. Elena and Adrian in the hotel lobby, his hand on the small of her back. Her face turned up toward his as they laughed. The body language was unmistakable. Francisco called back faster than I expected. Found him. He's living in a care facility now. Lost his house after the money disappeared. I explained the situation. He's willing to meet. The next afternoon, I drove south through the countryside outside Madrid. The cafe Francisco had chosen sat on a quiet street corner in a small town, the kind of place that served as a community gathering spot. Horacio Quintana looked smaller than I'd imagined. He sat hunched in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. Francisco sat across from him, watching him protectively. I slid into the booth beside Francisco. Horacio looked up, and I saw the hollowed-out expression of someone who'd stopped trusting their own judgment. Señor Quintana, I'm Javier Mendoza. Thank you for agreeing to meet. His voice came out quiet but steady. Francisco says you're dealing with the same people who took everything from me. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo Pablo had sent. This woman, have you seen her before? Horacio's hand shook as he reached for my phone. He stared at the image for a long moment, and I watched his face crumble. That's her. She called herself Elena then too. Came to my grief support group 3 months after Pilar died. Said she lost her mother to the same cancer that took my wife. She cried with me. Held my hand during the meetings. His voice broke. She seemed to understand. The emptiness that comes with losing someone after 40 years together. That was the approach. Find the wound. Mirror it. Use shared grief to build trust. She told me she was a financial advisor, Horacio continued. Said she could help me invest Pilar's life insurance payout in a way that would honor her memory. I gave her everything. How much contact did you have with this man? I showed him a screenshot of Adrian. Never saw him. It was just her, but there were mentions of a partner sometimes, someone who handled the technical side. Francisco leaned forward. Horacio's been working with me to track down others. We think there might be at least 2 more victims between Marbella and Madrid.